Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of video game news. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, not 2014. Let's hop into Yu-Gi-Oh! We've got something new here. Let's see. Remote Duel main event announcements. Compete in the Remote Duel main event series tournament. And then we have my World Championship event now underway. So I guess we could jump into that today. We probably have, let's see, it's probably the same thing over here too. World Championship 2024 qualifiers. If I actually qualified, that would be kind of crazy. Depending on where I ended, I'm already skipping the first 5 levels. It seems like you get cards, award tickets, and gems. So, yeah. I'm gonna spend absolutely no effort in this at all. Play my standard old Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck and just jump in here and give it a try. But yeah, honestly, if I was to win at any level, have any level of success at all in the World Championship, I would just assume that there is an incredibly high amount of people who have lost interest in Yu-Gi-Oh! At that point. Have a whole special loading, and I think we may have a situation here where they have locked it down as far as the playfields. At least the mates seem to be still selectable, but the depiction here and here and here all seems to be the same. So yeah, I'm still playing Fallout New Vegas, doing the, I don't even know what the name of this DLC is, come to think of it. Well, I guess I'll describe it as the Northern Passage DLC, because that's the location that it starts on. No, it's the Honest Hearts DLC is what it's called. It is a small, completely different area that from the main game that gives you a nice little hunting area, but it's kind of too small to be too big of a experience unless they do some weird twist. And so I do suspect I'm going to be done with it in like 5 to 6 hours of gameplay, and that is with you picking up basically everything. Weirdly, the Honest Arts DLC feels like it would be encouraging people to not pick up items, since there really isn't any crafting. There isn't a lot of crafting or cooking locations. There's a few, but as far as I can tell, there isn't a single shop in the entire DLC section. So if you craft anything or cook anything, you can't sell it. So like the previous DLC I did, Lonesome Road, you inevitably are just going to want to dump a few thousand pounds worth of junk into the closest storage container that you can find to the exit of the DLC so that you can grab everything when you're done with the DLC and just be over encumbered by hundreds of pounds. And then walk out to the main game section, at which point you can use the Big Mountain remote if you've done Old World Blues DLC to teleport yourself to Big Mountain, where you can then craft and sell a lot of almost everything. There's still there are still some items that are just totally vendor trash, though. One thing I decided to do in starting the Honor Starts DLC was to use a console command to just set my level back to level 0. Level 0 doesn't really exist, so it set me up automatically to level 1. By doing that, that just sets me in a nice position where I'm continuing to get experience while playing. It possibly is causing the enemies to not scale. It does feel like in Honor Starts I'm one-shotting enemies that look like they are very low-level enemies, but that is a small trade-off really compared to the benefit of just getting new levels to go up, to get more perks, to continually just have those elements of the game actually do something, whereas otherwise the way they want you to play once you get to the max level is to do nothing new, just shoot things because you like shooting things, which in a lot of ways that's just an admission by Bethesda and Obsidian that their games are just not actually that good. Yeah. And that's definitely what I feel, is that Bethesda ZeniMax has just this kind of rigid way in which it wants to design its games, or more accurately, a rigid way in which it wants to design game content in the vendor trash you pick up, that makes them good at making really good game content and terrible at actually making good gameplay. The gameplay loops that they're stuck with is just the lockpicking, the hacking, the crafting, the repairing, and on rare occasions, much more rare than it should be, there are occasions in which you actually shoot enemies. Yeah. One of the issues I would say that is a problem with the Honest Hearts DLC is that it is in this different mesa area, and they've added a rain weather system where it rains fairly frequently. As soon as the rain happens, it drastically changes the visuals. It potentially can cause more rendering issues. There's just a lot of extra stress on your GPU and the engine itself. I would say it's probably more the engine these days. My GPU should be able to handle anything a 20-year-old game can throw at it. The Mesa area barely has any buildings or anything that would hint that it's in a Fallout game at all. You definitely could have made the Honest Arts DLC a completely separate game. I half wonder if maybe halfway through development it was a completely different game. Well, we finished the practical exam on that. We'll deal with that later, obviously. But yeah, there is part of the main storyline, a fairly dark narrative, where I definitely feel like Fallout should be more lighthearted. Like, Starfield should be the dark, serious narrative now, and Fallout should be the silly, this is ridiculous sci-fi, cheesy sci-fi type stories. But yeah, in the main game line, when you enter Honor Starts, you can't find your location anywhere. You need to find a compass, or a compass module for the Pip-Boy, really. And so, to find this compass, you're sent to a bus crash full of Boy Scouts, effectively, all dead. Little skeletons that have been scaled down to look like children who died in a horrific bus crash. And yeah, that's just a little bit over the top. More than you really needed to do, I would say, as far as storytelling goes. Of course, New Vegas is pretty average 98% of the time, and then every 2% of the time you'll have like one topless lady on the strip with X's over her boobs, over her nipples, or you'll have one character that has a narrative about how they were raped. It just comes out of nowhere, and it's just not staying within the same feeling and themes. Again, I think there's just an element there where the writers of Fallout games are not really staying consistent, would be my way of explaining it. Yeah, if you listed the 5 or 6 TVMA stuff elements, just told somebody about that on, or ESRB put that on the back of the box of a Fallout New Vegas game, then a lot of people would not want to play it, despite the fact that it is a very infrequent occurrence. But yeah, it's almost impossible to say anything more about Fallout New Vegas, and I've said that several of these live streams now. There's just really not a lot to say about it. It's the same old, same old. One thing you could certainly do is find a mod that would just remove the level cap instead of resetting the level back to 1 using console commands. That probably would be better. But then I think if you started to just level up to like level 60, 70, 80, you may find that there isn't a single gun in the entire game that can do enough damage to the enemies if the enemies are scaling up to that height. And of course, I'd still say getting rid of the weight restriction completely as a mod makes a lot of sense. Because that is just a huge time waster always. There are definitely elements where I can see you can make a game like Fallout New Vegas, or Fallout 3, which I still think Fallout 3 was better. Better written, better experience overall. But yeah. Yeah, I could see making a new game that was very similar to Fallout, but just had a lot of improvements by not being called Fallout. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Prey, the second Prey, kind of has that feeling. Borderlands kind of has that feeling. There are several games that are just slightly different. Witcher 3 definitely can have that feeling too. And a big part of that is definitely the case that Fallout really is just a collection of gameplay mechanics more than it is a solid game. New Vegas in particular, there's just not really that big of a narrative there. Some of the DLC, also if you play it very late in the game experience, will feel very different than if you play it early. And I definitely feel like you should probably try to play the DLC as early as it seems reasonable to play it. My hope with finishing the Honest Hearts DLC is that I'll get something that would let me cook from any location, because finding a campfire to cook at is very, very difficult in a lot of places. And then let's see what else has been going on. Well, the nightmare scenario continues. I guess is the appropriate thing to say, and that I think I finally can feel fairly safe about my laundry washer being now replaced and safe. I got a auto shut off, what's called a condensate pump, that I put in the drain pan, so if my laundry washer ever does decide to overflow, it should be able to now turn on this pump and pump the water up into, well, my hot water heater drain pan, which is connected to a pipe that runs outside. Okay. That being said, I have had yet another thing now break, in that my fancy toilet has broken, and yeah, so now I need to buy a new one. Fancy bidet washlet toilet seat. I would recommend either paying really a large amount of money, which most people can't afford if you're going to go down that route, to get 5-10 year warranties, or going somewhat cheap. And by somewhat cheap, I only mean relatively cheap, of $200, $250. The ones that are not electric, the electric bidet toilets that aren't electric, I don't think are worth getting at all. Yeah. If you're just having to sit there and turn nozzles and hold nozzles the whole time, and you really just have one, maybe two features, that's not great. You're frankly going to end up spending $30 on a cheap non-electric bidet, and then spending more than double that on the effort to install it, or way more if you have to pay some plumber to install it, which you really shouldn't have to. That being said, people with bad backs or other disabilities absolutely are going to get screwed there, and they're the most likely to get a fancy toilet seat. But yeah, it's broken in a somewhat humorous way, in that it auto cleans itself, and when it does that, normally it'll do it at kind of random times, but when it does it normally, there's no problem. But now it is broken, and it's now started shooting water as it's auto cleaning across the room, hitting the walls with clean water, but not that clean water. It's water still coming from a toilet, in part. On top of which, it's just stopped working correctly. So, yeah. that's the next disaster. A lot of things that I bought about 5 years ago are starting to break, and the toilet I had only a 3-year warranty. So I'm half wondering if I'll just get a cheaper model that has only a 1-year warranty, just expecting it to break. Ideally, it would be 10, 20, 30-year warranty and would just last forever, but yeah. They don't do warranties and they don't honor warranties anyways. But yeah. There's definitely a possibility that something electrical happened. I know the power went out, and it does go out fairly frequently, so maybe there was just something that broke both the laundry washing machine and the toilet circuitry. I don't know how, though. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. Like, the one's on a power strip, the other was on a smart plug that would have almost certainly broken first. I am fairly cautious. In fact, I've done a lot of work to be as cautious as possible and have things try and last as much as possible, and it just doesn't really happen. Isn't happening. Maybe more than likely I've just been really lucky in the past 10 years or so to not have too many things break. And I've also been heavily focused on just improving the quality of things and the amount of things I've had in the past 10 years. So more things could break for that reason. I did have a TV that broke after a year. That was total garbage. And an argument against not buying super slick deals on sale TVs. And in particular, I don't think you should buy TVs from Walmart, because the Walmart models are specifically cheaper for TVs than is what I've heard, at least. But yeah, I don't think any summer sale is going to have me buy anything at this point, and frankly I don't think any Prime Day or Black Friday sales are going to have me buy anything. Yeah. Do you think that that is the way this is going to go? Let's see. And I don't think I have anything else to really talk about. So, we had a heck of a bunch of game announcements in the last stream from all of those events. And so we'll probably feel some of the after effects of that, in that there probably will just be a few more games being announced. But I do think it is very much like a peak hype cycle, and then it's going to fall right back down, because there's just not, I bet, any new announcements that are going to come out this week, maybe next week, maybe the week after that. They more than likely just cram them all into events. Yeah. And I definitely feel like I probably want to start trying to have only 45 minutes worth of Yu-Gi-Oh going forward. And I think that works a little bit better. It helps guarantee staying under the 3. Well, it doesn't guarantee, but it helps improve the odds of it being under. Under 3 hours. Man, I'm just doing awkward pauses. And yeah, nothing's fixing that, certainly. I woke up fairly early this morning. I did 1 episode, pre-recorded. I should be as focused and as alert as possible. And yet, I am just getting distracted and going numb still. It may just be that I'm getting old here, in part, and I can't multitask as much as I maybe thought I once could. YouTube is announcing some new effects here. They're doing a Gen AI content inspiration tool to brainstorm ideas, understand your audience, build videos faster. I don't know how AI is going to help you build the videos or make the videos faster, but they've also rolled out a more automated thumbnail A/B testing experience, although it's going to be more, I think, ABC testing, which either manually, bigger YouTube channels have been doing that for years, or they've had extra features. They probably had extra features to do it, but you only have to look at like Good Mythical Morning. Every single time they put out a video, a few hours later, the thumbnail will change to a completely different thumbnail. And seriously doubt that it is actually a testing to see which types of thumbnails are more successful or not, as much as it is just double dipping and trying to convince a lot of people to accidentally watch their video and click on their video a second time. Of course, that works better for Good Mythical Morning, who has millions of viewers and I imagine plenty of watch time, whereas a smaller channel would be severely penalized if they tricked a large amount of their viewership to watch the video a second time, because a lot of people would then click off and your watch time would go down. Your average watch time would go down, and then you stop being recommended. Whereas Good Mythical Morning is always going to be recommended. We can't go a single couple of days without yet another announcement of layoffs, so Sumo Group is cutting 15% of its staff across Canada, Poland, and more. This is from GameDeveloper.com, and this is definitely not an appropriate screenshot to use in this kind of announcements, regardless of whether Secret Mode or Sumo Group made a Texas Chainsaw game or not. It's just not appropriate. And Timber Games, the subsidiary of Sumo Group, has been closed down entirely. I have an update here. Yeah. They gave up on Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Black Tower. These layoffs come just days after Sumo unveiled new projects at the Summer Games Fest. Its busy weekend included first looks at Critter Cafe from Secret Mode and Death Sprint 66 and more from Sumo Digital. Timber Games, though, I'd like to know what they actually made. Did they actually make anything? I'm looking at a website called Timber Games, but I'm not sure if they are part of Sumo Group. Yes, they are. The website is a mess. So, I must be thinking of a different company because I've never seen this logo before for Timber Games. Here they have culture drives creativity. I would argue counterculture drives creativity way more than culture does. Culture is basically conformity and doesn't tend to lead to anything new. Doing what is traditional leads to doing the exact same thing. You have just terrible website here with a bunch of like HTML tricks. Notice that as you scroll, the text here is scrolling to the right. But from all I can see, it's just a hopeful game company. And the best that they've done is just comics from what it looks like. Yeah, I could certainly see, looking at this website, looking at these comics, that this looks like it is just a bunch of hipsters hoping to have a video game company. Yeah. Here we're seeing pictures of an all-female group of people. Let's look at their team that was just laid off. Okay, you have a... I kind of like this idea in general, though, I will say. As far as if you are just going to try and protect the privacy, I don't think you really can for employees. It's an interesting thought, though, that you would have somebody do caricatures, although inherently caricatures of a person are designed to be somewhat insulting. So yeah, this isn't really professional. I kind of like the idea, but it's better just to do the traditional professional thing and have people's actual photos here. That looks like a lot of people. Again, just better to have actual group photo, in my opinion. So yeah, shutting them down seems like it means nothing at all, because Timber Games seems to have never actually made a game. And inherently, if you're making comics or making websites and caricatures, then you are not focusing enough, in my book, on making video games. I would have rather seen their website be simple and almost completely empty, one page, just we're hiring, and that's about it. Okay. Guess we'll go this route. So yeah, I do at least recognize Sumo Digital as a name. There definitely is a case where some game companies are a lot better about getting their names to stick in my brain. Sometimes it is the quality of the name itself. Sometimes it is just a case of the advertising by the publishing ends. Yeah. And it definitely doesn't have to be logical. Like, Gearbox is a great example of that. Gearbox is a ridiculous name for a game company that has not made any racing games. And yet, I remember Gearbox very easily. course, you can get some other very terrible options, such as Fulbright and dim bulb. In that Fulbright wasn't a terrible name, but to then make a rival company called dim bulb to counter Fulbright doesn't make a lot of sense. EA, just being EA, not Electronic Arts anymore, is easy to remember. There might be an argument that new words like Atari and Nintendo are very easy to remember because they don't mean anything to an English speaker otherwise. This will be the last game we play today, I think. Gorilla says Lego Horizon Adventures and Nintendo Switch were a natural fit. Switch is a platform that allows us to broaden the audience. Gorilla Games talking about this new Lego game, which I'll be interested in seeing how well that plays and how well that's received. There is quite a lot that could potentially go wrong with a Lego game not made by Traveler's Tales TT Games. Because most Lego game players are going to expect a lot of those elements to show up. And if Lego Horizon Adventures doesn't have puzzles, doesn't have little Easter egg funny parody things, if it doesn't have any kind of dance moves of the characters being silly and dancing, like that will potentially just add up and start to reveal that the game itself is not going to feel as good. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, it would be fairly crazy to make a super serious Lego game, though. It is also an interesting thought about how is Sony gonna feel when 3 to 4 times as many units are sold on the Nintendo Switch than the PlayStation. They may not care too much, but who knows? Suda51 says he would love to release Killer 7 for modern consoles. I really hope it get it done someday. There's not really a reason why on PC you can't play Killer 7 right now. I covered it just a few months ago and it plays just fine. The much bigger problems with Killer 7 is that it needs a full-on remake on the concept and the experience overall, to the point where it needs to basically be a completely different game. Because an on-rails shooter with 7 different people who have 7 different types of guns shooting at these monsters and telling this very Japanese, very weird story just doesn't fly. Ideally should be a light gun game in an arcade, but there aren't arcades anymore, so there's no way to make that happen. So yeah, you would have to just expand on the story a lot more. you'd have to actually care about the story. There's a point, and this is only a slight spoiler, where a lot of the narrative and a lot of the story just gets thrown out, and the character basically talks to the screen and says, "What do I know? I'm just a Japanese guy." It is a cult classic game, and so yeah, you could do a cheap port, certainly for consoles. Wouldn't be a problem at all, but it really should be handed over to somebody besides Suda51 to turn it into something more. And that's kind of the feeling I have with a lot of these cult classic games. Like, I definitely would prefer if Lollipop Chainsaw Repop shifts from being a cult classic into being something that would be more broadly appealing, now that years later there's a much larger gaming audience in general. Yeah, I'd want to see the same for Killer 7. And Deadly Premonition is another example of a game that, if that just was polished more for a broader appeal, I would appreciate that. The lock-on style of shooting guns in Killer 7 is also very weird, and just not knowing who to target or when to target, what to target, particularly in this first level section, is kind of crazy. I spent like 20 minutes in this section not seeing or recognizing I needed to shoot this eye, otherwise it was just going to constantly spawn an infinite number of enemies at me. Like, really, a remake should just kind of more like what the Perfect Dark trailer seems to be doing. It really should just be that Killer 7 is a group of 7 assassins that are going on missions, and get rid of a lot of the weirdness that doesn't play a big role. And have a consistent narrative. Here we have Video Games Chronicle has a actual interview with Suda51 talking about, in part, the Switch 2, his fascination with Twin Peaks, which led to him parodying it in Deadly Premonition, his fascination with Western culture, and his favorite beer. This is something that I want to point out, not having actually read this interview. We just don't get a lot of interviews, particularly from Japanese developers in the game industry, whereas it definitely feels to me like in the movie and TV industry you could very well have a lot of interviews and get a lot of interviews overall, and that everything is just not as public, that's for sure. See. I definitely would be happier if there were more interviews and less announcements of layoffs. I'm sure most people would be happier with that. So another victory on Yu-Gi-Oh! Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. I think if I put enough time into it, I definitely could get to the level max here. It seems like you have a decent amount of time. Yeah, I'm not sure if stage 1 ends. Yeah, stage 1 ends basically on the 20th. So in like 8 days. And then there's 3 more days for regional qualifiers if you've gone all the way to the top. Meanwhile, I also have to, in the next 18 days, at least get up 1 more level in ranked. Then we've got some more rewards. And then we've got some more proficiency tests, which, see if we can cheat through this fairly quickly. 5 out of 8 questions. Question number 1. Let's go with this one, the blue one. Nope, it was spiny. Let's pick that one. Nope, it's the other two. Let's go with this. Nope, it's vicious. So we've already lost. Not even reading the questions, just guessing. Problem here is it's going to then give me different questions. We got 3 out of 8. We would have had to have gotten lucky and gotten 2 more correct. Just randomly guessing. So now, as long as we don't throw. Too many wrong. If I can just memorize it. Let's see, maybe we'll get lucky here. I think I'm 1 short. Nope, we got lucky. And like, I just couldn't care about the answers or explanations at all on any of this. This whole proficiency test is useless when you really just are too busy doing other things in Yu-Gi-Oh! An interesting comparison also here is that apparently Magic the Gathering Arena has updated and added some new features, and I haven't seen anybody actually report on it. So yeah, the following of Magic the Gathering Arena, I imagine, is super small. And it is crazy that they just announced a companion app and already they're de-emphasizing that in favor of a world championship, which they should have announced the companion app like a month before the world championship. Let's see. Metaphor Refantasio is recasting a veteran voice actor after he admitted an abusive affair. Atlas has confirmed that Toru Furuya will no longer be in the game. The way cancel culture works in Japan is definitely very different, and it is often very much a self-canceling thing where you admit you did something wrong and then you still get punished for it. Completely as bad as if you just denied it. Frankly, it probably would be better to just deny it. Let's see. Tabloid said that he had a 4-year affair with a fan who was 37 years younger than him. Which, how old is he? Because that might change things. But yeah, if they were both of consenting legal age in Japan, which I think in Japan the overall laws supersede the local laws as far as age of consent to bring it up to 18 or at least 16. I know that some of the local laws may still be stuck at 14. So he's 70. Oh yeah, I know this story. I heard whispers of this from other sources in the past couple weeks. So if he was 70 and he was dating someone 37 years younger than him, then that's still just like a 32-year-old, or 33-year-old. Let's see. At one point the relation, he confessed, it says, at one point during the relationship he struck her and made her get an abortion after making her get pregnant. Well, that seems extreme. And that feels like a translation error. Like, but yeah. Video game doesn't want to be related to this. Furuya has done voice acting for Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon, Yamcha in Dragon Ball. These are all 1960s, so this would be the first Sailor Moon cartoon series, not Sailor Moon Crystal. Pegasus Seiya and Saint Seiya, and Amuro Ray in Gundam. He also voiced Mario in several Nintendo commercials, as well as the 1986 anime film Super Mario Bros. The Greatest Mission to Rescue Princess Peach, which I don't know this film. Interesting. Let's do a little research here and see if we can see something. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this, and I don't think this ever came to the West, that's why. And it's kind of crazy to call this anime, but I guess and that did not make it bigger. In the old days, that would have been called anime. Here's a great example of some of the problems with restoring video, particularly animation, in that here is a VHS depiction of how it would have been animated, and here's effectively just either a hand reanimated, traced over coloring of it, or a computer coloring of it. Colors are completely different here, and the detail, I would say, feels like it has been, although these are tiny pictures, the details feel like they have been softened somewhat, or overly sharpened in some places also, where this feels like this was hand animated where it was, where this feels like this was computer animated. And that is definitely a problem with restoration of cartoons in particular. Let's see. It seems to me like the entire thing here is on archive.org, so it's being listed under the Creative Commons 1.0 Universal open source license, and you can just download it completely. I bet there's no English dub on it. Yeah, you can just hit play and watch it on archive.org if you wanted to. We of course won't do that today. So that's an interesting blast from the past, but yeah. And yeah, I don't know what there really is to say about this. I think in Hollywood, in the past, they would have said that this is just tabloids delving into the private affairs of two people, or this is just cancel culture in general. Yes, 2 accusations here of striking a woman, which is unacceptable. Forcing a woman to get an abortion is unacceptable, although understandable too. Like, considering how much having a child can change things. Forcing a woman to get pregnant, also unacceptable. So I guess that's 3 things in 4 years. That's quite a lot in that time period. But people's relationships in general are messy. So nobody really has a perfect relationship, even if they present like they do. But yeah, video game companies and Japanese companies in general don't want to do anything, to have anything to do with people when these cancel things happen, regardless of things, regardless of whether it has anything to do with your actual work. Inherently, when these kind of cancel actions happen, you're societally, as a group, whoever is canceling them and not hiring them is making the decision that they would rather that person starve to death, literally, than to be associated with them. Which, yeah, that's a harsh and immoral decision also. Yeah, people shouldn't die just for being a bad boyfriend, for being an abusive boyfriend. Yep, that's not justice, that's not fairness, it's definitely not having your day in court and defending yourself. Like, we saw this very much with some of the other cases where people who are just in bad relationships, on drugs, drinking alcohol, often have partners that are doing the exact same. So who's to say that in that 4 years there wasn't as much, if not worse, happening on the other side? I'm not trying to blame the victim here. I'm saying in general we just don't know the situation, and the video game company doesn't know the situation, so their rush to expunge in a person is probably unsituated. We saw this also with the voice actor who was caught with drugs, losing his career, probably forever, when he was only really hurting himself by taking drugs. Anyways, we'll move on from that. A new Apple update for porting toolkit aims to accelerate iOS development. This is a rough headline from GameDeveloper.com. Should be a new porting toolkit. New version for porting toolkit. No, just get rid of the update for it. No, yeah, it should be new porting toolkit version or update. Probably just say version. That would make more sense. A new Apple porting toolkit version aims to accelerate iOS development. Yeah, rough headline there. We are starting to see more announcements, certainly, around things being ported to iOS. And I do think some game companies do see kids as playing on iPhones quite a bit, so trying to capture that audience makes some sense. But inherently there is also a danger that you may just train a new generation of gamers to expect all their games to play on their iPhones, at which point they would never buy any kind of handheld or console of any sort, which I think is kind of true for Apple fans in general. They only buy Apple products. That's the only thing they're enthusiastic about. I don't think they shift over to Nintendo Switches and PlayStations. And inherently, I don't think Apple products, even with the M2 chip, are going to catch up or surpass what gaming can do on consoles. And inherently, the backward compatibility is just not going to be there on the iPhones. There's also a high chance that iPhones may just give up on gaming and not really care about it, so the library may almost certainly would never be there. This obviously isn't getting into the deep details as far as what it's actually offering. They're talking about GPT-2 here, AI, which Apple has branded as Apple Intelligence. That's what they're calling AI in their tool chains and their setups. TT Games posting something interesting as far as Happy Superman Day on June 12th. I don't know why June 12th is considered Superman Day. Is that just canonically when Superman landed on Earth or Superman was born? I don't know. But otherwise, you have just the Lego Star Wars game. This is from April 5th, 2022. Was the last Lego game that TT Games, I think, has made and released. It's definitely the one they're promoting. They took longer to make this game because they were making it in the Unreal Engine and finally moving away from their own previous engine. Meanwhile, a completely different team has made the Horizon Lego game. Yeah, shooting guns and laser swords and jumping and swinging and flying vehicles. All things that you're going to want similar things to exist in the Lego Horizon game, and maybe they won't. Plus, since this is all 9 films worth of content in the Lego Star Wars game compared to just 2 games worth of content at most, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lego Horizon game, not made by TT Games, is very short in comparison. And remember that Lego games have always traditionally been promoting that OCD collectathon mentality where there's a bunch of minifig characters to collect and unlock. There's a bunch of different types of collectibles in each level. There's usually at least 30 red bricks to collect to give you special abilities. And so if none of that is there, that'd be crazy. On that aspect, though, I think it is also worth pointing out that I think video game companies, probably led by the ESRB or somebody like the ESRB, need to come together, and admit that they have a moral imperative to stop making games that feed into people's obsessive compulsive natures, that it is actually mentally damaging people because they are spending too much time on games. I don't want it to be a full Chinese government style crackdown on video games to ever occur, where kids are just playing video games for 12 to 18 hours a day, or at least there's accusations of kids doing that in China. But yeah, a lot of games, Fallout New Vegas is a great example of that, just have way too much stuff that you're just doing over and over again to see a number going up. The whole Skinner box concept is a problem, certainly. I wanted to point this out that Bethesda Game Studios has retweeted this mod for Fallout 4 called Shady Motives, free for PC and Xbox. Any donations made for this free thing goes to the Alzheimer's Association. This may have been one of the mods that was delayed because of the most recent update to Fallout 4. But yeah, this is Bethesda promoting some modders making content instead of Bethesda making content themselves. And of course you can get it at Nexus Mods. And I would say this art here, probably not helpful as far as what it really is, because it's really going to look like this. I think one of the most dangerous things about whenever I get around to playing Fallout 4, comparing it to New Vegas, is that I'm just going to find that Fallout 4 looks a lot better, way better, and plays slightly better, but still is mostly the same issues of it not really being a great gameplay loop or game story. Let's see. Questline with the lead character Wes Johnson and crafted by Sim Settlements team. New player home by Owner Custom Weapons. New custom jacket by Nero. A fully voiced companion. It was created almost entirely in one weekend for charity, so it's not really that much of an experience. So this isn't the big Fallout 4 mod then. And while we're here, it might be worth it just to see what the other most popular mods are for Fallout 4. Let's see, new this week, popular all time. Armor Smith Extended, Armor and Weapon Keywords Community, unofficial Fallout 4 patch. Yep, that's always the problem here, is that it is fixing the bugs more than anything else, and yeah. A lot of this is just all of this. I wonder if you don't see any of the adult mods unless you log in, because I would expect there to be an adult mod more. And then here you have some of these mods just make the characters look too clean for the story, the environment. Achievements. Yeah, I bet adult mods are hidden. Let's see. Here's exactly what I was interested in looking at. In comparison, you can see the visual difference. So, texture packs, mod configuration menu, weapon mod expanded, anti-crash. It's very much one that is recommended. Script extender, more perks, character overhaul, Nevada skies, weather effects. Yeah, there's no weather in the Mojave area in the main part of the game. Let's see. Stutter remover, floor and terrain overhaul. The one thing I would want is just the over encumbrance mod, but maybe you just don't even need a mod to do that. You may just be able to do a console command on PC, and you can't install patches on New Vegas on consoles. There's definitely a lot of neat clutter, retextured, unlimited companions. Interesting. Notice though that the most common mods here aren't actually adding any new content, and why would they? This one looks like it might be adding content, but yeah, it's definitely, most of this is just modding visuals. Yeah. So yeah, I still just don't feel like you should waste your time making mods. I think it's a waste. Now, Skyrim Special Edition mods are mostly tried to be sold through their own storefront. You'd think Minecraft mods would show up in this list, but not really seeing much of that. And there's definitely games here that I wouldn't have thought there would have been much of any mods for. There's definitely games here that may get you in trouble if you tried to mod them. What's an interesting question, certainly as I scroll down this list, is this is probably a list of the most enthusiastic hardcore fan base Borderlands 2 mods. I would have never thought about that. Most of these games also, they're perfectly fine to play unmodded. They don't crash. It's Fallout games and Bethesda games that are a real problem that need mods. Most games don't. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel mods. Interesting. What could you really mod in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel? Ah, you could mod the visuals. Waifu Yours Chaos Angel. And then 2024. Yeah. This is just all alternative art visuals. Shadowverse mods, version 8. I don't think this is even actually a Yu-Gi-Oh mod. Yeah, I never would have thought of that though at all, that there might be people bothering to mod Yu-Gi-Oh. A lot of times just taking other people's copyrighted art and putting it into Yu-Gi-Oh. You can see there's 32 pages of this. And I still feel like there's probably some adult mods here that have to be hidden behind some other login. Unless Nexus Mods was the one that actually got rid of all the adult mods. Well, that was an interesting... Okay, click in the right place to close the tab. An interesting look, at least. But yeah. I should, before I make another episode of Fallout New Vegas, I should just see if there is a way in the console to increase my carry weight. Like, I am definitely at the point where I'm willing to cheat that way and just never become over encumbered again. Although maybe that's a little premature, because I may end up just taking perks that would lower the increase the amount I could carry anyways, and so that counters that thought. Anyways, let's finish the big news and try to not lose momentum here as we go through the entire experience. An Epic Games Store database may have leaked many unannounced games. There are listings for Turok, The Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy 9 Remake, and more. Of course, these could all be fake information, temporary information. There's apparently a PlayStation game called Codename Utah, a Rockstar game called Selma, and a Square Enix game called Momo. These are probably all code names. It's being claimed that a fully developed Last of Us Part 2 remaster has been sitting fully developed for more than half a year. Maybe waiting for a PlayStation 5 Pro to be announced and released. Would be my speculation. I was watching some of my own footage, and yeah, when I get into the headlines, it does feel awkward when I'm just reading the headlines. I don't know the best way to address that, but there is kind of this distinctive shift from doing something and putting thought into it and then just reading the headlines like I'm reading off a teleprompter, which is effectively what I am doing. It feels just like I'm not putting enough of myself, enough personality into that section. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it certainly more. Moving on, a free-to-play developer called Voodoo has acquired the social platform Be Real. I have not heard of either companies. So, yeah. The idea of having a social platform with hyper-casual games probably wouldn't work, but it's an interesting thought. Gearbox, I guess the paperwork is gone through and is now officially out from under Embracer Group, although I think Gearbox Publishing has been renamed and is still part of Embracer. So now they're under Take-Two, which I don't think means as much as anybody might think, because I think there already have been some layoffs at the 3 Gearbox offices, and as far as the Borderlands team, in Dallas, Texas, Frisco, Texas. Like, I'm not sure how much of that team is the same team that made Borderlands 1 and 2, the best of the Borderlands games. And yeah, there's nothing saying that Take-Two wouldn't just change things drastically or shut down Gearbox. Yes, they're waiting for the movie to come out and hoping that that's successful. But I question heavily whether a comedy movie would convince Take-Two to put extra money into the Gearbox universe. If anything, I imagine Take-Two is just going to keep Gearbox around, even if they don't keep they're going to keep Borderlands around, even if they don't keep the developer Gearbox around as their default sci-fi shooter, looter shooter game. But there is definitely a possibility that a different company would make a Borderlands game, or they would just try to make Borderlands a live service game that people would just play non-stop. You know, it is kind of weird that Borderlands is a, at most, 4-player co-op game, local co-op more, or online co-op, when it could definitely be more of a live service game. It is also worth pointing out that this is very much just insider baseball information. This is just the paperwork being done. It's not really new news to any gamer. As far as gamers are concerned, Gearbox was owned by Take-Two months ago. Fitness boxing featuring Hatsune Miku is coming to the West this fall, which I'm a little surprised by that. I kind of thought maybe they wouldn't want to pay the license to bring it to the West. It does create a weird situation though, in that you probably don't have kids that are super into Hatsune Miku, and I wouldn't say she's like really inappropriate in any way. They've done everything they can to make her a squeaky clean mascot, but yeah, kids very young should probably not be boxing with a Switch with the Joy-Cons, because they're just going to punch a wall. Kids older are probably not going to want a cartoon anime girl as your protagonist or as your boxing partner, sparring partner. Fans of Hatsune Miku probably are going to feel a little awkward sparring with her, because she's a singer, a pop idol, not a boxer. So yeah, let's just look at the teaser and just kind of I have a hard time figuring out who the right audience for this is, other than anime fans who happen to be somewhere around 19 to 40, and who are just huge Hatsune Miku fans. Here we have some of the later Vocaloid characters also showing up. Some wild anime fashion, not super extreme, but belly and legs showing for sure. I don't know if this isn't actually a rhythm game. It says it's rhythm and exercise, so maybe you are just punching at a beat. And there are 24 classic Pia Pro songs. I don't know what Pia Pro is, but PA Pro characters. Is PA Pro the owning company of Vocaloid and Hatsune Miku? Am I confusing Vocaloid with... maybe it's not Vocaloid. Yeah. I'll be interested to see if this has any large reception, or if it isn't very much a niche product for a niche audience. There's not really another rhythm boxing game or boxing game I know of for the Switch, so if you are trying to get your kids moving and they've already done the 2 or 3 other exercising games that have been made released for the Switch, this really would be your only option. Let's see, Head Up has put out, I think, a longer support for Pride Month, which, yeah, here they are spotlighting women in games and United Against Bullying, but I don't think they're making any real commitment to donating to any of those services, but at least they are, I guess, being consistent here in that they put out this post and this post on June 4th, and they are now following up on June 12th, 8 days later. Of course, all they're doing is free Twitter shoutouts, but they are also doing more than most game companies have done. Most game companies either are doing nothing at all or just changing a icon or something to be a rainbow flag. Let's see. YouTube Shopping has also expanded to launch new shopping features in South Korea. I would say South Koreans do like to shop, so this could be an interesting twist if you happen to watch a lot of Korean content creators. All of a sudden they may start to promote more and more products in shopping. Also, the whole AI thing we talked about before, as far as how that actually is going to work, I don't know. Let's see, let's click on this and see what this really does. You have to go to inspiration on your page, I guess, is what you do. And then it's just a chat question and answer box. You just type in whatever. And I imagine a lot of people, see, I don't even know what I would really want to type, and I don't believe what the answers would really be, because notoriously everybody pretty well knows what they tell you to do and what really works are two very different things. This was an interesting announcement that there's now a Mist 30th anniversary collection. This might be somewhat time limited too, as far as when you can buy it. And what it highlights too is that you would be getting Ribbon from 1997 and Masterpiece of Miss Masterpiece, but not the 2021. Well, yes, it would include the 2021 Mist, which is, I guess, one I don't own. Also supports VR. It's not giving you anything before the Mist Masterpiece Edition. Well, it is also giving you real Mist, though. Yeah, there's been many different versions of Mist released. Now we are at the point where there are 2 versions of Riven, which is not in this bundle at all. So I imagine that's why this bundle is going to go away, is that the release of Riven Remastered, which is not really what it's called, is going to make this bundle not the complete collection of what you can actually buy on Steam. And interesting, all of the Ubisoft funded games, Myst 3, Myst 4, Myst 5, Uru, the complete collection I believe was made by Cyan. So all of those games are also in this bundle, which makes me wonder if Cyan does have the rights completely to all the Myst games. I think they do. But yeah, 20% off discount for me just to buy the new Myst game. It's not a particularly great deal, particularly since I don't think I would go back and play the new Myst at this time. What I want to hear is, what are they going to do next? If they remake Riven, are they coming in here and remaking Myst 3, which was not made by Cyan? Even though I liked Myst 3, I like the puzzles, particularly of Myst 3. I definitely expect them to make a new Myst 3 that takes the story in a different direction. Definitely, I don't want them to do the same story of Myst 4 or Myst 5 at that point. And definitely, I don't want them to try to make an MMO like Guru again. So I need to know what their next step is, and I'm not sure they know what their next step is as far as after re-releasing Riven. It is important to point out that Cyan has failed to really get success with any of its non-Myst related games, such as Firmament. But yeah, here's the new tools and strategies, and new forever favorites have arrived with Modern Horizons 3 on Magic the Gathering Arena. And this is the Epic Game Store pointing this out, which I have no idea what the tools are, what the strategies are, anything like that. If I click on this, all I do is I get the picture. And certainly I wouldn't ever really want to go back and play Magic the Gathering Arena for as badly as they treated me, and as bad as the experience really was in general for everybody. Apparently Star Wars Outlaws can be finished in 30 hours, and they apparently also wanted to add swimming to it and didn't get that far. Generally speaking, I don't think swimming is a good idea at all. Alright, and I'm gonna have to take a break, which that's no surprise. And so we'll pause the video and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. When I pause the video, I go over to Duel Live and let it play, and that last game I just watched really just highlights how overcomplicated and crazy Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten. It's a much more fun experience when it's just a cartoon and the moves and the actions are thought out and scripted to be as exciting as possible, and you have the characters very easily explaining everything so that anybody following along, usually little kids, can follow along what the cards are doing. But in the actual card game, you have like 10, 20, 30 cards all synchronizing and synergizing against each other. It is just pure chaos. I guess I wanted to point out that apparently there's a 5% rewards for Epic rewards you can do for purchases at the Epic Game Store. I guess that's important information to throw out there. I don't think too many people are actually buying anything from the Epic Game Store. They're just taking the free games if they can even get them, and that's that. I seriously doubt anybody could make an argument that the Epic Game Store has done well in presenting itself and setting itself up. And I can't really make an argument that they should have started smaller. They should have started bigger, having the backing of Epic as a company, and they should have had a much more feature-rich product. It wouldn't be impossible to make something that was different enough and as feature-rich, or even have more features than what Steam has, and start from that aspect as far as selling yourself as the store that will just give you a better shopping experience compared to Steam, which outside of the front page is kind of a nothing experience, because yeah, there really isn't a great way to browse around Steam. And then there was a video here comparing Luigi's Mansion 3DS and Switch comparisons from Video Games Chronicles, where they were kind of just showing how the visuals have been improved. Very pixely on the 3DS, low resolution screens, more smooth. Of course, they're not doing a very good job of the comparison here, because they should be showing the exact same image, not the left half of one scene on one version and the right half on the other. Now, I don't know what you're really supposed to take from any of this, other than, yes, the 3DS version of it is pixely and old looking, and the Switch version is not. It's more soft CG, cel shaded type visuals. It's not amazing for the Switch version, but it'll be good enough on the Switch's resolution, on the Switch's screen. It'll look good enough, certainly. And then there was a GameDeveloper.com article here saying that the CWA accuses Activision QA supplier Lionbridge of retaliatory layoffs. The company allegedly ousted 160 workers after they organized in search of better work conditions, which probably is true. Yeah, and unfortunately it often doesn't lead to much other than maybe a settlement of some sort. Yeah. There is a legal phrase called piercing the veil, and there needs to be a similar concept, I think, for managers, middle managers, upper managers, anybody who has any authority to make decisions at all, where they could be held to a higher liability personally, perhaps even criminally, for their unlawful bad behavior. There definitely is just far too many avenues in which corporations, which are made up of a lot of people, managers included, are not held to any real standards. Like the idea of a corporate death penalty in general should exist and should be acted on in many cases, where instead of just forcing a corporation to go bankrupt and sell its assets to other corporations. The idea of corporate incarceration, however you would actually implement that, should be considered instead of just fines. There's definitely an argument that if a manager can be singled out and shown that they did unlawful retaliatory layoffs, they should be personally banned from being in a management position, perhaps for a long period of time, perhaps for the rest of their lives. Yeah, but that just does not happen that often. At best, you'll have some specific states that will rule against specific people, saying they cannot be on the boards of corporations if they do something shady. One former president being an example of that. Let's definitely not get into politics, and then let's talk about the new games that have come onto Steam. Again, I suspect we are not going to have too many games after all of the big Summer Game Fest announcements and Xbox events, And I have changed my height keys, so now it is control, I think it's either control shift page up or control page up for Firefox to move to the left tab or the right tab. And so I've made my mouse wheel has a bump on the left and right where I can bump the mouse wheel left and right, and so I have set that up. So hopefully I will get used to using that, and that means I won't have to move the mouse cursor, which I try to keep kind of hidden in the corner, the lower right corner. I won't have to move it all the way to the top, select a tab. There is probably room for something else to be programmed too, but I don't know what I would want to do it. And I just did this with Logitech options. I didn't install any new extension for Firefox specifically. But yeah, if I had one extra button, I would program it to go to the very far right tab. But yeah, hopefully this will save me some time, save me some mouse movement, so I can go through these a little bit faster. So, Ghostwire Arena of Dead. What kind of game is a single player retro first person shooter? Do I want this on my wish list? It's just not my style game. It is interesting to, anytime they try to make new characters of like different species, these gray looking characters, that makes them stand out differently than a generic low polygon 3D character. But yeah, that's not gonna make, I'm not gonna put that on the wish list, even though it is being received very well. Just not my type of game. One of the things that I did run into as far as a thought with Fallout New Vegas is that when you take the outfits of a downed enemy in New Vegas, you'll shoot some human, their head will blow off, but the bloody gore of them being disemboweled, well, not disemboweled, but dismembered, and their head being blown off, is not echoed by you being able to strip them naked. And so you'll have, particularly in the Honest Arts DLC, you'll have characters that are kind of in Native American type dress, very scantily clad, just leather top, leather skirt bottom for the women, and shirtless for the man, and leather skirt bottom for the men. Well, when you strip them of clothes, then they have brand new clothes that brand new underwear under those clothes that makes no sense canonically in a nuclear post-apocalyptic world. And if you consider how something like Baldur's Gate 3 in the custom character creator just lets the characters be naked, and how Witcher 3 has actual sex scenes in it, we really have evolved a lot since New Vegas. I'll give this a chance. So I could see a situation where an unmodded version of, I'm gonna say no to that, an unmodded version of a Fallout 5 would pop up an option that says, hey, do you want to be in streamer mode first and foremost? And streamer mode would be adding censorship, whether it's black bars or the underwear that has always existed before, or whether you would want to and mute the audio. Game Grumps is playing this game right now. It's kind of a silly doing a job simulator. So that puts me in a weird position whether I would want to promote a game just because Game Grumps is promoting it, when Otherwise, I would not promote this game. And yeah, there is no reason why I would promote this game. Just because Game Grumps is playing it. Not really even promoting it, they're just looking desperately for something they can make content with. This is an odd visual style. Just gonna leave me giving it a chance. So yeah, I'm not sure I completed my thought there, but yeah, I can imagine a Fallout 5 just having the option of nudity. And certainly in the case of ragdolled enemies dead on the ground, if they were naked, you're not going to get like dramatic artistic poses. Now in Fallout you are able to grab corpses and drag them around, so I imagine some people could do some fairly silly things there. But yeah, you're just not going to get actual porn from that experience. You're just going to have the natural outcome of a corpse being looted. If you take their clothes off or their armor off, they're probably going to have at least ratty underwear under there in a post-apocalyptic world. They're not going to have brand new, completely untorn, completely clean underwear. And I think that's part of the dissonance there, is that it would just make more sense if it was torn up underwear. Yeah, that does certainly speak. Am I gonna put this on my wish list? I don't think so. I think I'm gonna be a little bit more picky as far as what games get to the wish list these days. Yeah, it certainly speaks though to how the gaming industry has matured a lot since New Vegas, which was, I think, about 14, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. But there's still a lot of ways to go also for the game industry. It's still very much treated as an immature form of art and is not given the same opportunity as other forms of art to go in different directions. And in general, casual nudity, I think in the United States, should be kind of shoved down the throats of United States citizens to the point where it stops becoming exotified and treated like all nudity is sexual nudity. Like, it would be a very fair compromise in a new Fallout game if you stripped the clothes off the characters, which maybe there should just be options to not do that if you don't want to, although that would break the game armor system. That'd be a very fair compromise to have horrific radiation burns on people showing, or mud and dirt showing. Something that would just speak to the horrors of living in a irradiated wasteland. But yeah, I imagine Microsoft now owning ZeniMax, now owning Bethesda, would never really go in that direction. And that's a bigger issue, certainly, is that I just don't feel like Todd Howard is willing to let Bethesda and Bethesda games grow and evolve. I just don't think he lets new ideas in. I don't think he lets go of old concepts. Wow, this one is getting reviewed quite a bit. Very poorly. So I'm gonna make a YouTube short on this, but really just to kind of warn people away, just because of the massive amount of reviews here. Got a point and click of some sort, some horror point and click. Is this something? Screenshots aren't loading. No, I'd say it probably isn't. Like, you wouldn't make this terrible of a screenshot otherwise. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no. Rocket Knight Resparked collection also not being received particularly well. I'm gonna give this more time though. Leave it on the follow list. And all of my talk about Fallout New Vegas and what the next Fallout should be may very well just fall into the category of what Avowed is from Obsidian. On the other hand, it may very well be a case that the Obsidian making Avowed right now has very little connection to the... I'll give this a chance. This looks like Uplink clone, hacking simulation clone. Yep. This doesn't look like a real game. Just a bunch of scenic environments. So you gotta be careful with your screenshots and advertising your game. This one looks good. I guess inherently though, I still want to wait until there's at least 30 positive reviews. So a lot of these games that are on the follow list do need to just stay on the follow list, and I still do need to do a follow list cleanup way more frequently than never, which is about as much as I'm doing it now. Yeah. So Avowed might be the game I'm looking for. Stalker or Metro series might be the game I'm looking for. Or there might be some other company that has made a game very similar. In a lot of ways, I'm not sure that Borderlands wasn't the game I was looking for, and that I've already found the audience. Yeah, as much as I haven't done the follow list cleanup, I also haven't looked at the adult section. I probably need to, once a month, just have a macro open up the adult section games and just go through it off screen, just in case there's something worth seeing and worth talking about. Of course, really can't talk about it on YouTube, so I don't know where I would be talking about it. Airplane, anything? Nah. I'm really not expecting to run into very many games worth mentioning today. This looks like this is a coin pusher game that might be good enough. I'm noticing that my mouse button bump is working pretty well. I'm having to move my mouse at a very minimal amount. Give this a chance. There's a danger certainly with the Honest Hearts DLC, and the same is true here, in that you have Native American dressed type characters, Native American looking type characters, First Nations, Native Americans, Indians. There's a danger certainly whenever you touch on that topic that it's going to come off as just exploitative or insulting or stereotypical. particularly in the Fallout New Vegas Honest Arts DLC, because you have what more than likely would have been non-Native Americans adopting a Native American-like persona. Yeah, very little today, and we went through it very fast today, so the bumps are working. The followers cleanup, however, is not. Then still I don't have a button to go all the way to the most furthest right tab, which is where I'm going now, but that's not too bad. That's just one to 5 extra clicks. Just double clicking on the arrow of the tab bar. There is also a thought of getting rid of the mouse cursor. I don't know. I mean, I certainly could do it where it's not being captured in OBS. It probably would take more processing power than it's worth. There might be a Windows way to make your mouse cursor also disappear too, but I don't know if there's ever a point where it makes a lot of sense to hide the mouse cursor, because that's just going to further confuse what I'm talking about and what I'm pointing at, and often I do like to just circle around. I wish if I gestured around here it would make a highlighted of that area for a few seconds. That would be a nice feature for Windows to do. It doesn't. I don't think anything probably does that. As far as the 24-hour peak, people are still playing a lot of Banana, which seems crazy, and it definitely seems like that is a great way of highlighting that there is not a lot going on. Team Fortress 2 is still getting played a lot, despite their complaints of it being buggy and full of bots. Helldivers 2 is still being played a lot. Fallout 4 still being played a lot. I wish there was a way I could just immediately jump into Fallout 4 after New Vegas, but boy, is that a lot of time commitment. That basically would turn my channel into a Fallout channel for a year or half a year. Crab Game is not the game called Another Crab's Treasure. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel might be higher as far as the World Championships on PC. 37,000 players in the last 24 hours. Cyberpunk 2077, Pal World, all still being played in the top 100s. Even down here at like 99 and 100, I don't think the list changed that much. And then as far as my chart goes, Banana is still skyrocketing upward. Apex is going downward. Destiny 2 is going downward. GTA is going downward a little bit. Baldur's Gate 3 is going downward. It's weird how I still don't really know what the actual gameplay of Baldur's Gate 3 is, despite its huge popularity. And then the Steam Next Fest is being promoted on Steam, and I imagine there isn't too much new. Phantasy Star Online New Genesis might be about the newest thing here. Online 2 New Genesis. This King's Call as a free-to-play game seems to succeed where many others don't. I imagine it isn't just because of legs and cleavage showing. The summer showcases of showcases, we should probably check that and see if there's any more showcases scheduled at this point. I'd be surprised, but maybe over the weekend. Devil May Cry 5 in its cheapest version is $9.89. I think there's more expensive versions. Still promoting the Steam Deck, obviously. And then new and trending is Fallout 76 just got its update, so that would be why it's trending. The Starfield Creation Kit also would be a reason why that would be trending. This Nightmare Cart was, I believe, a Mario Kart clone at one time, and they had some kind of copyrighted characters. I don't think it was Nintendo characters though. You can see there's 51 reviews for the creation kit that's rated very positively, and Fallout 76 is mostly positive. Top sellers still Destiny 2. Then yeah, popular upcoming would be the hint as far as what to keep an eye on. And I don't think this popular upcoming has changed at all in the past couple days. That might be a less updated list. And how would a popular upcoming list even be formed? It'd probably be by wish list. So special live streams each day from June 6th to the 9th. So all of these announcement events have happened. A significant amount of them had very little to be reported on as far as the events. That the biggest, like, for the most part, the Microsoft event here and the Summer Game Fest in general, which is here, were the only two important ones. So the rest of these either need to go away or be scheduled at different times because they're not competing at all. Let's see. Yeah, Nightmare Cart is overwhelmingly positive. Which I guess I'll just add it to my list. Add it to the library. Might as well now. And I'll make a YouTube short on it. Alright, and so this is going to bring us to the Video Games Chronicle headlines, and this is the part where it feels like I'm just reading off a teleprompter, because I am just reading off a teleprompter, and usually I'm trying to rush to finish, and today's really not going to be any different. So I don't know how to add my own personality into this section, and frankly I usually don't have a lot to say about the headlines either. Anyways, the important headlines are the ones I talk about at the beginning of the stream. So in a perfect world, I'd probably just read the headlines off screen, chop them up to clips, put them on a secondary clips channel, but I don't think YouTube quite works that way, and I'm definitely not set up to have it work that way, and that'd probably be annoying for a lot of people to have hundreds of little clips pop up. Anyways, let's do the headlines. And yeah, my bump left and my bump right, which that did not work. That was the danger, is that it may be most recent, not left and right, as an option that it goes to. There's a setting I need to check in Firefox. But yeah, otherwise my bump left and bump right do seem like they're working fairly well. An Epic Games Store database may have leaked many unannounced PC games. Suda51 would love to release Killer 7 for modern consoles. Metaphor Refantasio is recasting a veteran voice actor after he admitted an abusive affair. Assassin's Creed Shadows Japan is roughly similar in size to Egypt in Assassin's Creed Origins. Star Wars Outlaws can be finished in 30 hours, according to the creative director. Responding to some negative previews, Star Wars Outlaws director says the demo was just an appetizer. Well, I mean, what else? should you say in that case. It probably would be better to just say we heard your feedback and are going to do our best to address you and delight you in the final product. Like that's probably your best bet. Previews, though, may be so close to the release version that they may not have time to make significant changes. I think we have a very compelling overall game, and just a part of it is represented here. That comes off more as an excuse than it really should, as far as a response. Yeah, there's a growing history of Star Wars content being disappointing, unfortunately, and frankly, most Star Wars content is disappointing. So, and even when there is a good Star Wars or well-received Star Wars game, it doesn't lead to a nice growth of Star Wars games overall. Sumo Group is laying off 15% of its employees. Apparently Sumo Group. Here's an interesting screenshot of a whole bunch of people. Apparently they're the Sackboy company, and I can't even tell you what game that is or what game that is. So yeah, it certainly says something that I can only recognize one of your 3 highlighted games here. This may be a game that's not even out yet. This is an interesting visual effect, though, to have photos squished down together into a colored band. Moving on. Treyarch discusses how being on Game Pass is impacting Black Ops 6's development. Oh, speaking of something, this isn't video game related, but there is a chance it might reference video games. This is political too, I'll risk you. There are reports that Israel has used white phosphorus on targets in Lebanon. There was a whole white phosphorus mission in, I believe, one of the Black Ops games that was fairly controversial, particularly since the game forces you to do it, to use it, I believe, on civilians. So what I suspect is you'll have some lazy news journalists using the white phosphorus scene in the video game as a reference, or trying to make some weird connection that really isn't there. I don't know if that is the mission called No Russian or if that's a different mission. But yeah, it's worth mentioning it because I imagine it might come up. People, I do not believe, use white phosphorus as a chemical weapon very often, and may not have been used much at all. But yeah, moving on back to video game headlines from VideoGamesChronicle.com. GameStop may have leaked the Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater release date. The update here says that the retailer has said its pre-order post included an incorrect release date for the game. So now they're just saying it's incorrect. Okay. Black Ops 6 beta could launch in late August for pre-order customers. There's some games that I think are trying to roll out even early access for people who pre-order, down to the point where it's going to be crazy. Nothing really would stop a game company from saying pre-order our game now and you can play it 6 months before people who don't pre-order it. That would be crazy, but I'm sure they would potentially go that far until there is a significant enough boycott or pushback against it. Anno 117 Pax Romana has been announced for release in 2025. Assassin's Creed Shadows gameplay video shows 13 minutes of footage. Ubisoft's Prince of Persia The Sands of Time remakes is getting a 2026 release window. Avatar The Frontiers of Pandora's first story DLC, The Skybreaker, is out next month. Yep. Again, I just never could get into these Avatar characters. Blue cat-like characters. Yeah. It's funny because I do like the idea of people trying to make different non-humanoid, sort of humanoid characters, but I would also admit that 9 times out of 10 those characters fall flat and don't interest me at all. Yeah, definitely feels like it's too much. If they weren't blue, I probably would feel a little bit better about relating to the Avatar characters. But also, if they didn't have cat faces, I'd feel a lot better. In fact, if they didn't have the cat features and were just blue, I'd be able to relate to that better too. I guess maybe I'm just not that open-minded or creative on that aspect, but Farscape is probably the closest example of what I find tolerable, in that 3 of the female leads in Farscape are just humanoids that look like humans that have wild hairstyles and different color skin. One of the male aliens is mostly a larger humanoid shape with face prosthetics and just kind of weird tentacle hair, and that's Dargo. And then one of the characters is much smaller and is effectively just a puppet frog character. And so once it's a puppet, it feels just like a puppet. And so that's fine too. And I guess the pilot also is a puppet, so yeah. The uncanny valley of these characters feels off-putting. I don't know why I'm going into so much detail talking about Avatar characters, though. Maybe if I actually sat down and watched the first movie, I'd be able to appreciate them better. Moving on. Prince of Persia The Lost Crown gets a free content update with story DLC coming in September. Lost Crown being the most recent game to actually have been released. I don't even think that's true now. It would have been Ubisoft's most recent Prince of Persia game, but the Rogue Prince of Persia has been released and is newer. And that was from another company. X-Defiant Season 1 revealed ahead of its July launch. Ubisoft shows 10 minutes of Star Wars Outlaws gameplay footage. Yeah, I kind of would like to sit through this. Gameplay trailer, overview trailer. Let's just do that. That's only 4 minutes, where I bet this one is 10 minutes. Okay. Visually, the cutscenes look fine. One of the things I can see right away about it is it just feels more visually polished than a lot of the locations of the other Star Wars early movies. It doesn't feel like it's just a completely empty desert planet or completely empty ice planet. Every scene I'm seeing here makes it feel like it is a much more lived in place. And so part of what I'm questioning here is this going to be something like a Far Cry type game? Because it feels like it might be, where you're running around, or it might be something closer to a Deus Ex game. Might be a little bit of one and a little bit of another. Running and swinging and shield cannons. Interesting. My guess is that this is probably more of a linear story experience than it would seem. And your discussions seem to be limited down to small decisions, which, okay, might be for the better, particularly in Star Wars games. Just take the writing out of the player's hands. What's funny about this is supposed to be a gameplay trailer, and I don't know how much of this really you would constitute or describe as gameplay. Like, a lot of this looks like cutscenes, which makes me wonder if there isn't just a lot of the game that is just conversational cutscenes. This looks fine. Arguably, if this wasn't a Star Wars game, it would have less of a requirement to be great, and perhaps be a little bit less ambitious as far as vehicle combat. It definitely feels like it's doing too much, too many different things, when it probably should just be a more simple run and gunner adventure game. But yeah, Ubisoft is probably wasting their time licensing the Star Wars name for a game like this when you could have just made a new game and called it the same, and called it a different name. Anyways, moving on. New Avowed details revealed in a 27-minute video, including third-person mode. This is the Obsidian's upcoming RPG, which, you know, could be half Fallout New Vegas, half fantasy game like Skyrim, or could be something completely different. In general, I question what a 2024-2025 RPG should be. Like, what parts of the role-playing are still desirable by gamers, and what parts do we want just automated away or eliminated? There's inherently a lack of creativity that you can have in a digital form of a role-playing game compared to a tabletop role-playing game where you can just say something is happening and the dungeon master can just say, yeah, it exactly happened that way, or correct you if you're claiming something too crazy, make you roll for initiative if you're trying to do something too crazy. The characters in Avowed definitely look like new kinds of species too. His ears are giant. Would say the big hair does match the giant ears though. Right. How to watch the Ubisoft Forward 2024 live stream. Imagine that has already happened. Yeah. More Resident Evil games are coming to iPhone, iPad, and Mac. We talked about that last stream. I think we should have a handheld too, says Xbox's boss, Phil Spencer. Which I heard some other people respond to that comment the same way I did and said, well, why don't you? Like, why don't they have something in development something that they could show off, even if it's just a very rough prototype. They should have had something in development. This statement almost makes it feel like Phil Spencer isn't getting like free reign of the Xbox division of Microsoft, and he is inherently trying to convince the CEO and the higher ups at Microsoft to fund the development of a handheld, which maybe he is. Yeah. Obsidian has seemingly leaked Avowed's release date. Phil Spencer says Xbox's aim with Call of Duty is to give players choice, not do slimy platform things. Alright, and that's going to bring us to the Gematsu.com articles, which we have about 12 of those. Lifeless Moon is coming to the PS4 and Xbox One and Series on July 9th. It launched on Steam in 2023. I think I vaguely remember this game, but weirdly it left the follow list for some reason. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was being particularly picky that day. PlayStation Plus Games Catalog and Classic Catalog lineup for June 2024 has been announced. You can check it out at Gematsu.com. There's a list here of games. Yep. Elden Ring shipments and digital sales have topped 25 million. It's not video game related, but there's an over-the-air broadcast channel called MeTV. They have just started to roll out a spin-off channel called MeTV Tunes, which is going to air fairly old cartoons from 70s and 80s, not super old cartoons to start off with, and not inherently cartoons that I think are public domain either, but they definitely will be Boomerang style, Blast from the Past style cartoons, assuming you have an over-the-air aerial to watch over-the-air TV, which most people wouldn't. But yeah, there is a potential argument to sitting a kid in front of those cartoons than sitting them in front of a iPad or iPhone, but that's not going to really happen. So I imagine it will be underviewed. Anyways, moving on back to video games. Goodnight Universe teaser trailer and voice cast has been announced. Louis Pullman gonna voice the main character. Who is Louis Pullman? Top Gun Maverick and Lessons in Chemistry. Then one of them is a celebrity from Reno 911 and Superstore. So these are all just face actors that they're hiring, which is always a mistake and a waste of money in my opinion. And yeah, seems to be likely that this game is going to blow its budget on hiring face actors. Fallout New Vegas also did that, hiring a bunch of face actors to voice characters and then having the characters not really sound particularly good compared to what they could have sounded like. And increasingly, as face actors get older, they are doing more and more video game work and animated work because they just don't want to be in front of the camera as they're getting older and looking not at their youngest, at their best. Fitness boxing featuring Hatsune Miku is coming to the West this fall. Visions of Mana launches August 29th. Do we have that Steam link? Yes, we do. I don't imagine I could convince myself to play the Mana series, even starting with a newer one. Newly launched third-party Epic Game Store database lists unannounced games. Mixtape adds a PS5 version. There's quite a few games like this where I'm going to start confusing them. This one in particular would be around music, so I imagine streaming this would be nearly impossible. Which I should also mention, Cracking the Cryptic made, I think, 2 episodes so far of trying to play the Braid Anniversary and twice now they have gotten Content ID claimed for the music in Braid. I don't know if Jonathan Blow licensed that music in a weird way and just couldn't get around that license in the Anniversary Edition, or if he just doesn't care, or intentionally, I think he intentionally wants people to get Content ID claimed on it. It's weird The Witness didn't really have that problem. That was his next game. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to a fairly successful YouTube channel is trying to highlight a game that's an old game in particular, and they're running into copyright issues. And frankly, I just don't think Braid is worth playing if you have to sit in silence the whole time there and turn off the music, because music plays a big role of it, a big part of it. Not a huge part, but a big enough part. Sumo Group is going to lay off up to 15% of its staff in a cost reduction effort. Dragon Age The Veilguard opening moments, gameplay, and screenshots are available at Gamatsu.com. Should I be paying more attention to Dragonguard Veilguard? I don't know. Really, I feel like I've seen a lot of this before they changed the name. Maybe I'm wrong about that. There's definitely some of this I haven't seen before. But yeah. Action RPG versus RPG. I question if anybody could make a real RPG game that wasn't an action RPG and have it be successful. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 version 1.003.000 update launches June 18th and adds 8 new suits. That is a terrible versioning system. Just way too many digits from what you need. Adding more suits to Spider-Man 2 is probably kind of cool, but it may not be enough to bring people back to playing Spider-Man 2 if they've already finished playing Spider-Man. I'm not sure Spider-Man 2 has come to Steam or PC. I don't believe it has. So that would be the thing that really would bring in a new audience. XO1 for the PS4 and 5 launches June 27th. Here we have another game that has already been released on other platforms. The PlayStation 5 in particular may just have this weird situation where this just looks like a flying around game. It does not look particularly interesting. Alien craft, flying around. Let's see if we can get a better understanding of what you're doing. It does just seem like you're flying around. It's fun and I like the vagaries. It reminds me kind of the game you play as a kid, putting your hand out the window and feel the wind flow over it and under it. It's enjoyable and relaxing, but it's not worth $15. There's simply not enough gameplay. If there was some kind of endless mode with randomly generated worlds, that would be something, but I finished the game in 3.5 hours. There really isn't any reason to play again. Even the remaining achievements or go high on this world or go fast close to the ground on this world. Nothing else to do or see. There's not even a reason to explore the worlds that I could find. So what I suspect you have here is an asset flip kind of game where they have taken a bunch of trains and merged them together in a weird way. But I can't deny that it's being received very well. Every complaint that reviewer had is exactly the kind of complaint I think I would have too. That there just wouldn't be enough of a reason to play that kind of game. Conscript launches July 23rd. Conscript, I think, is perhaps more of a game than more of a horror game than you might think. Yeah, that screenshot, this screenshot, picking this one is kind of the doing it a disfavor for what it really is. Or what it seems like it really is, at least. Zone, the Explorer's Legacy remake, launches in October. Zone. Some kind of like point and click adventure from the look of it. I guess this is a statement as far as just what point and click adventures could look like in modern times, and probably what they should look like in modern times, just hyper realistic and not going for the cartoony, silly look that older point and click adventures tended to have. Resident Evil Village sales have topped 10 million. And with that, we are done with the Gematsu headlines. So that's only going to leave us with Game Developer, which we have about 9 GameDeveloper.com headlines, and then we'll be done for today. Slightly below 3 hours, which is great. WB says Suicide Squad will see its 1-year roadmap through to the end, which, okay, it's probably nice to say that out loud. That doesn't inherently inspire a lot of confidence, though, as far as anything past that 1-year roadmap. Free-to-play developer Voodoo acquires the social platform BeReal. Oh yeah, and speaking of that, I don't believe there's really anything on the 1-year roadmap of Suicide Squad that would inspire people to stick around. Anyways, it's like, it could be that some update comes out and it changes the way the game is, but more than likely nothing is going to happen there. Nothing new or interesting enough to grow the audience. Sumo Group cuts 15% of its staff across Canada, Poland, and more. Notice how GameDeveloper.com here says exactly 15%, and Gematsu says up to 15%. I imagine Gematsu is more technically accurate. CWA accuses Activision QA supplier Lionbridge of retaliatory layoffs. This may also be one of those situations where the QA supplier is really just a puppet for Activision, and thus that is a union busting technique that often happens where contracts are given to puppet companies, and if those puppet companies have any labor disputes or unionization efforts start up, the contract itself gets cut, and then all of a sudden all of the union sympathizers or union organizers get laid off in retaliatory layoffs. All the while, the puppet company Lionbridge, acting as cover for the larger corporation Activision, and usually that doesn't seem to be working as often these days as it once may have worked. Sports Interactive strikes a deal for the Premier League to feature in Football Manager games. Xbox touts new consoles and teases handhelds. I'd say very lightly teases handhelds. Phil Spencer deems Xbox layoffs as, quote, very hard but needed for, quote, sustainable business. Xbox Games Showcase 2024 promises a first-party deluge at some point. And then how Pile Up Poker survived cancellation to become a Puzzmo hit. And that's all the GameDeveloper.com headlines, and that's all the news for today. So, as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.